You've heard of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. It killed about 3,000 people and leveled one of America's greatest cities. It's in every history textbook. But 6 years earlier, a hurricane hit a city in Texas and killed more than twice as many people. It remains the deadliest natural disaster in American history, and most people have never heard of it. This is the story of the 1900 Galveston hurricane. In 1900, Galveston, Texas, was one of the wealthiest cities in the United States. It sat on a barrier island in the Gulf of Mexico, 2 miles off the Texas coast and connected to the mainland by a single bridge. The city was a major port. Cotton, grain, and cattle moved through Galveston on their way to the rest of the world. The city had the first telephone system in Texas, the first electric lights, and some of the most expensive real estate in the South. Galveston called itself the Wall Street of the Southwest. Nearly 38,000 people lived on the island. The city was booming. But there was a problem nobody wanted to talk about. Galveston's highest point was only 8.7 feet above sea level. The island was flat, narrow, and completely exposed to the Gulf. There was no seawall, no hurricane barrier, nothing between the city and the open ocean except a thin strip of sand. Engineers and weather experts had warned about this for years. In 1891, a meteorologist named Isaac Klein wrote an article arguing that a seawall was unnecessary. He claimed that the shallow waters of the Gulf would prevent any hurricane surge from reaching dangerous levels. He was wrong, and that mistake would cost thousands of lives. In late August 1900, a tropical storm formed off the west coast of Africa. It crossed the Atlantic, moved through the Caribbean, and entered the Gulf of Mexico. The U.S. Weather Bureau tracked it, but communication was limited. There were no satellites, no radar, no aircraft reconnaissance. Forecasters relied on ship reports and telegraph messages from Cuba. Cuban meteorologists warned that the storm was intensifying and heading toward Texas. The U.S. Weather Bureau in Washington dismissed their warnings. Relations between the American and Cuban weather services were tense, and Washington overruled the Cuban forecast. The Bureau predicted the storm would curve northeast and miss the Texas coast. It didn't. On September 7, 1900, the skies over Galveston began to darken. The barometric pressure dropped. Waves started breaking over the beach and flooding the low streets near the shore. Some residents recognized the signs and began leaving the island across the bridge to the mainland. Most stayed. The Weather Bureau had not issued a hurricane warning. By the morning of September 8th, the Gulf was surging into the city. Water covered the streets in the southern part of the island. The single bridge to the mainland was submerged and impassable by early afternoon. Anyone still on the island was trapped. Isaac Klein, now the head of the Galveston Weather Office, waded through the rising water to warn residents along the beach to move to higher ground. But there was no higher ground. The entire island was barely above sea level. There was nowhere to go. By 5 p.m., the storm made landfall. Winds exceeded 140 miles per hour. The storm surge reached 15 feet, completely submerging the island. Every structure on the island was either underwater or being torn apart by the wind. The destruction happened in hours. Homes built on stilts were ripped from their foundations. The wooden debris became a battering ram, smashing into the next row of houses and the next. Entire neighborhoods collapsed into a churning wall of water and wreckage that rolled across the island from south to north. Families climbed to their rooftops and watched the water rise until the roof gave way. People clung to doors, mattresses, tree trunks, anything that floated. Many were struck by debris and killed instantly. Others drowned in the dark as the surge overwhelmed them. The storm raged through the night. The wind didn't begin to die down until the early morning hours of September 9th. When the sun came up, Galveston was unrecognizable. Every building within 3 blocks of the beach was gone. Not damaged, gone. An estimated 3,600 homes were destroyed. The city's infrastructure, its bridges, telegraph lines, water mains, and rail connections was completely wiped out. The island was cut off from the outside world. And then came the bodies. The official death toll was set at 6,000, but most historians believe the actual number was between 8,000 and 12,000. It remains the deadliest natural disaster in United States history. More Americans died in one night in Galveston than in the San Francisco earthquake, the Johnstown flood, and the Great Chicago Fire combined. Bodies were everywhere, in the wreckage, in the streets, washed up on the mainland, floating in the Gulf. The sheer number of dead overwhelmed any attempt at burial. At first, workers loaded bodies onto barges and dumped them at sea, but the Gulf currents pushed the bodies back to shore. The city resorted to burning the dead. Funeral pyres burned across the island for weeks. Workers were given free whiskey to keep them on the job. The smell of death hung over the city for months. Relief efforts were slow. With no communication and no bridge, it took days before the outside world understood the scale of the disaster. Clara Barton, now 78 years old, arrived with the Red Cross. It would be her last major relief operation. The survivors faced a choice: abandon the island or rebuild. They chose to rebuild, but not the same way. Galveston launched one of the most ambitious engineering projects in American history. The city built a massive concrete seawall, 17 feet high and eventually stretching over 10 miles along the Gulf side of the island. Then they razed the entire city. Every building, every street, every block was jacked up on stilts while workers pumped millions of cubic yards of sand underneath to raise the grade. Some structures were lifted as much as 17 feet. It took years, it cost millions, but it worked. When another major hurricane hit Galveston in 1915, the seawall held. Only 53 people died, compared to thousands in 1900. But Galveston never recovered its status. The hurricane had broken the city's momentum. Houston, safely inland, took over as the region's dominant port and economic center. The ship channel was dredged, the railroads were rerouted, and the money followed. Galveston went from the Wall Street of the Southwest to a mid-sized beach town within a generation. The 1900 Galveston hurricane killed more Americans than any natural disaster before or since. More than Katrina. More than the 1906 earthquake. More than the Johnstown flood, the tri-state tornado, and Hurricane Maria combined. And yet most people have never heard of it. Part of the reason is timing. The hurricane happened before the age of film and radio. There are no newsreels, no audio recordings, no footage. The disaster exists only in photographs, written accounts, and the memories of descendants. It's easy to forget something you've never seen. Part of it is that Galveston itself moved on. The city rebuilt, raised itself up, and kept going. There was no prolonged national reckoning, no congressional investigation, no high-profile lawsuits. The storm came, the city fell, and the survivors picked up what was left. But the biggest reason is simple. History has a short memory. The deadliest natural disaster in American history happened 126 years ago, and most Americans couldn't name it if you asked. 8,000 people died in one night. On American soil. In a city that had been warned. And we forgot. If this video moved you, subscribe to Village 5 for more stories like this. We cover the disasters that history left behind every week.